We're now 1/3 of the way through the season, and roughly 1/3 of the valuable, viable fantasy football players have gotten hurt. So what do you do? It's week 7, guys. Time to do some best ball review. Let's talk about it. Some interesting chats going on right before the show, but let's pull it up and let's start the review process. And before I hop into this stuff, of course, got to talk about the AR of it all. I'm always getting tagged when there's an injury update on Anthony Richardson, and unfortunately looking like he's trending towards being out the rest of the year. Their latest report was that Jim Irsay, the Colts owner, saying that he's probably going to miss the rest of the season. Apparently up to AR if he wants to rehab the shoulder or do surgery right now, give him a better shot to get going earlier in the offseason. I'm still holding out hope, fingers crossed, that he does decide to do the rehab option, then see if surgery is worth it after that. But certainly one with him where I just got to put out the public statement right away because I know everybody wants to see me tilt. And I'm done tilting. I think that Pete, of course, our beloved podcast partner here on Splash Play, Pete Overzet, summed it up well in his P.O. Box email on Friday where tilting on your terms is a thing where, of course, I'm happy to lead into the tilt during draft season. I'm happy to be the butt of the joke / the angry guy here for the sake of a bit. And also just to be honest and to wear it on my sleeve sometimes. But I know for me, it's more a thing where just got to be a little more level-headed about the portfolio at this point, especially with how much we spend, how much time we spend, how much money we spend doing best ball. So I would encourage you guys to do the same thing. And I will say for me, one thing that has been a point of solace, and obviously the way that I draft, if you've watched our shows this entire offseason, going back to February, basically, I like drafting zero RB teams. I like drafting teams that could theoretically benefit from the chaos of a season. The fact that I've started the year as well as I did, and now things are certainly starting to crater down on Underdog in particular because of all the injuries that we have going. I think it's something for me where you have to also adjust your priors with what your expectations were. And for me, my expectations were always that my teams will be better by week 11, week 12, week 13, obviously going into the playoff point of things with all the rookies that I draft, all the zero RB builds. And I think it's something too, where if you started the year well and then things are running poorly for you, you kind of have to keep that reality check in mind that your expectations were probably a little bit too high anyway, based off the early success. So that is sort of the ebbs and flows of best ball. That's why historically it was advocated to not talk about best ball, because at the end of the day, the lineups that get there, that advance out of their pods, it's all about pod luck. It's all about your teams coming together at the right time. So some solace for me, but also I think some solace for you guys out there that there's still a lot of football left, still a lot of time left. We're going to try to figure out who are the guys that actually can help you beat some of these shitty teams, some of these injured players, all of that, and help you get where you need to go. But let's talk about it. Yeah, Rich, seems done. Seems done. Seems done does not mean is done. I appreciate Creamy Sauce's negativity here, but we are a positive channel as always. And also, just quickly want to give myself, before we hop into the best ball stuff, quick pat on the back. That was the best showdown video I've ever done yesterday. If you guys saw on Twitter as well, finished one Keenan Allen catch of roughly 10 to 15 yards away from winning a 10-way chop of the Million Maker. So I feel like everything's coming together nicely for me as we talk about on the show. As data starts to accumulate, you can build bigger sample sizes, you can identify weaknesses. There's not a lot of shows out there, I can tell you because I watch them all. Not a lot of people talk about Gerald Everett yesterday. He ends up making the winning lineup. Not a lot of people talking about fading Michael Gallup to go to Brandon Cooks. So I think if you're here on Splash Play, and I'm saying this more for myself as much as for you guys, I think we're going to get there. I think I'm going to get there. And that was my biggest win of the season yesterday. So I'm happy to 4X some profits here, bring home a couple grand. But definitely one where could have been a lot more annoying this morning if I had won the 150K or whatever the split would have been there. But there we go. Wasn't Everett captain that got there. It was Everett in the lineup, but I did have an Everett captain one that would have been good. But yes, Everett, nice touchdown for him. So feeling good about that. But the 3 takeaways on Showdown, I think that we do in those videos. Of course, I do the Showdown videos Mondays and Thursdays. I think those 3 takeaways are the most valuable thing that I give out information-wise. And I know I've heard people in the chat and the comments as well saying the same thing. So come back on Thursday. And a shout out to all the new people. Checked out the video yesterday. I appreciate it. But let's talk about this season as well. And some of the debate I think we should hit on before we hop into, of course, this list of top players that we always go through. Here we got our guy Tyler, of course, the emo cowboy, talking about these injuries and bad runouts have me beaten a submission. May start flattening exposures moving forward. Creamy Sauce actually feel the opposite way. Injuries are always impossible to predict. I'm going to take heavier stands. I don't really believe as much in what Creamy Sauce is saying, and no disrespect to Creamy Sauce and his username, which I have to assume is a euphemism for cum. But I think for Tyler, I think the lesson that Tyler's talking about there is one that I learned last year and then still kind of walked myself back from, where a couple of guys that I had high exposure to last year were Trey Lance and Darren Waller, just because of the types of builds that I wanted to make last year, which included a run-focused QB going after the 6th round, an elite tight end like Darren Waller was perceived as. And because those guys, obviously Trey Lance got hurt before he even had a chance, and now his career might basically be donezo. Darren Waller, though, guy that just got hurt because he was an old tight end, I think it's one of those things for me where I've said deliberately, and I said it throughout the show this year, that I didn't really want to get above 25% on any guys, didn't really even want to get above 20%. But then a few of my guys, of course, sneaked up there. Christian Watson, Michael Pittman, Anthony Richardson, some of the rookie running backs. Some of those worked out. Devon Achane's been a really strong player for me at around 20%. But I do think a lot of my biggest takeaways have been I could certainly play or take some things. I know better a lot of parts of football. And I think that's where the research, the prep work that we do on Splash Play all year round does help. But the big lesson for me is just that you have to kind of accept some humility. You have to accept some sort of fact of the variance of it all. Just that, like, as I talked about with AR, like I thought there was a 50% chance that AR was a world beater, but because of best ball, I was going to cap myself at 25%, ended up a little bit under that. I think it really should be more like you get 2x the field if you love a guy. You get maybe a little bit more than that if the guy's really cheap and you love him. But I think besides that, that's got to be the biggest lesson here is that all the I know better kind of stuff, like guys like Pete, guys like Corain, guys like Gretsch, all these guys who've been doing this for a while, Herzig, that have been doing best ball teams and building successful best ball teams for 5 years. For those of us that have been doing this for 3 years, you don't have the same level of knowledge. And I think that's something where heeding that sort of wisdom, heeding what the room gives you kind of stuff is really one of the biggest takeaways for me. So, of course, it'll be a discussion point as we go, both this season as well as in the next year. But certainly something that I want to highlight up top here because I think it is an important discussion point to have. And it all comes down to risk tolerance ultimately. And if you run good, it feels great. But if you're our guy Felix, of course, who won the DraftKings Million Maker a couple of years ago, got 85% Najee. That's one of the worst fucking bets that anybody has made at any point in football this year. And I think that's something where, you kind of have to, I think, have a little more humility with that and not just fall into the take lock, the traps of all of it. So that's something, again, talk about as we go. But that's the business here. Let's see. We got some fun, interesting chats. My highest scoring BBM team is now a team from a Spags Drafts. Spags Drafts benefit everybody, perhaps except me, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Appreciate the chat as always here. Let's get into this stuff. Let's talk about the top players. So top 10 on the year. It's a standard scoring. Let's go to half point PPR. Number one scorer in half-point PPR, the guy in the thumbnail, Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill currently cresting towards, projecting towards 2,300, over 2,300 passing yards. If you were to take his per-game average and put it over 17 games, obviously Miami's motivations could wane at the end of the year, though hard to say in that AFC East that they'll have enough of a lead to feel like they can rest guys week 17, week 18. But Tyreek, I think what he's doing right now, he is a guy for me where if you have injured players, if you have Devon Achane being out for a month, if you have Anthony Richardson, I've talked about a lot, two of my favorite QB duo that I would draft a lot of times, Tua, Anthony Richardson. It's entirely possible that Anthony Richardson might make a team for me that makes the playoffs just on the strength of having Dolphins with him. So a guy like Tyreek, if you are looking for your salvation and you have Tyreek on some teams, I think that's really the guy that I would look towards and say, he is a guy that can carry some shit through. His usage in that offense is so great. Jalen Waddle at some point you'd expect can seize a little bit back, but we're now a third of the season through and it's just Tyreek week after week, crushing, getting the volume, getting the air yards, getting the opportunity. So Tyreek to me is one guy where if you have him, especially with Justin Jefferson going down and Jamar Chase, I think going to slowly level out a little bit more with T. Higgins being back in the mix and hopefully getting better. Tyreek is the guy that once again, for the second straight year in best ball, I think can really drive a lot of success and help carry you where you need to go. So best player in best ball right now, best player in season long right now, that's Tyreek Hill. I don't think you can do terrible guy. Like we can all agree he's done some awful things in the past, but very, very much the player that you need, I think, in this format, barring an injury. And of course, as we know, knock on wood, injuries can always occur. So hopefully Tyreek keeps it going because he might have the best shot to break 2K receiving yards that we thought might be a Jefferson this year. It does seem like it could be Tyreek. Also for Tyreek too, one thing I just want to quickly highlight, him doing that flip and then taking the camera and doing it, whatever. Like the fact that the NFL is going to find this motherfucker 10K or more, and they ran that highlight over and over and over again. Just such bullshit. Let the guys have fun with their celebrations. Let them use props. Who gives a crap? This guy's playing out of his goddamn mind. If you give me 2,300 yards in a year, you can literally grab my baby and flip around with him. And given that it's Tyreek, I don't know that that's who you'd want to trust. But point being, I just think it's really hypocritical, terrible one, all that stuff. Let's see. Elite QB back on top. Elite QB back on top, but it's all relative. I mean, let's go through the top 10. So we got Tyreek number 1, Josh Allen number 2, Christian McCaffrey number 3. I hope our pal Big Lenny comes in today. Christian McCaffrey dealing with an oblique issue. Apparently, if you are a McCaffrey supporter, shouldn't worry that much about it. Might be out a week, maybe 2 at worst. Best case would be that he plays this week with some discomfort, is playing on Monday Night Football, so it's a little bit time to rest. But this is why, guys, this is why you don't go into random YouTube streams and start victory lapping guys that were drafted in the top 3, because you know what happens? They can get hurt too. Christian McCaffrey, has this history of injuries. So he is one guy that playing out of his mind, I can't do enough to say I don't have regret about not drafting Christian McCaffrey as much, but I do think for him, it's one of those things where we're now starting to see it. 2 straight weeks under 13 points. You can see right here. That's part of the cause for concern. Injuries mounting. That's the cause for concern. The Niners need to save this man for something a lot more important. That's the cause for concern. So even if Elijah Mitchell doesn't get there as the guy who pulls touches away, does seem like Jordan Mason pulled ahead of Elijah Mitchell last game after Mitchell had been out for a few weeks with a knee issue. For McCaffrey, though, I think you are potentially seeing the run bad here. You are seeing a lot of stuff for him. That is the risk point why you don't love taking a guy like McCaffrey and hoping that workload holds up over the course of a year. The flip was baller. No fun league is the worst. It is true. I think the hypocrisy of it all is really what drives me nuts, where, hey, if you want to run that clip on social media, then don't find the guy. If you don't run the clip at all and you just say, oh, this is an embarrassment to the sport, then yeah, okay, find the guy. I still think it's more fun than not, but it is bullshit. I don't think it needs to get to the point like in The Replacements. If you guys remember that classic film where guys are doing river dance things in the end zone and they score a touchdown. But I do think overall that it does seem like something. Just let the guys have fun out there. Let them make some viral moments. Yeah, Big Lenny suspiciously absent all of a sudden. I mean, it is what it is, man. Ultimately, though, I show up here every day. I'll take my lumps, and I expect the same of you guys in chat. But Christian McCaffrey, hopefully he gets better soon for you guys that are relying on him. Jalen Hurts coming back to form. We've talked about it basically throughout the season. Started really ugly. Things have started to level out a little bit for him. Still don't think he's the same player as last year, but the usage being so great is going to carry him every week. He is certainly an elite QB you can feel good about as well. Raheem Mostert at number 5. At a certain point, this is going to drop off. Jeff Wilson being out this week was, I think, a big saving grace for Raheem Mostert. Savon Ahmed looked good, but also got banged up in that game. That probably helped Mostert out a little bit. I don't think you're going to have many situations that are this perfect crush of situation like the matchup versus Carolina was, as well as just having all these guys out for Mostert moving forward. But he keeps hanging in the top 10. You can see him slowly coming down a little bit, though, even with a 33-point game. I don't think he's going to have that same, explosive ceiling every week, but I do think for him, with where you drafted him in either redraft or best ball, Raheem Mostert certainly looking like one of the steals of the draft and a guy that should keep benefiting to some amount as long as Achan's on the sidelines with that knee injury, of course. Tua Tagovailoa in the 6th slot here, looking great as well. It's weird, though, because he really hasn't had a crazy outlier game. This is where we talk about the lack of rushing upside, where you could see, even comparing it to Jalen Hurts here, like just more reliable 20 to 28-point games for Jalen Hurts, where Tua can hit 28 points, but he's going to have these down games as well. That's sort of the one thing with Tua that is a little bit of a bugaboo. But being a part of this Miami offense, being a part of a team that we talked about last year was so great, heading into this year too, definitely one for Tua that he's just been so strong as being the Brock Purdy of this Miami offense. I think that's really the best way to look at him. I don't think he's the greatest player in the world. I don't even know that I'd call him the MVP necessarily. I think I'd be more inclined to call Mike McDaniel the MVP. But I think Tua in the spot in the 6th hole, it really looks great for him. Another guy that got a little bit underdrafted, especially compared to the Trevor Lawrences of the world, which I think we talked about very much on this stream. Don't forget to like/sub so Spags can lather us up. Yes, so shout out to our guy Tyler as always, but I do appreciate everybody coming out here, and please do, yes, hit that like and subscribe here. Splash Play, always trying to fight the algorithm, and thanks to you guys. You guys smashed the like yesterday. Finally getting the impressions back up, which great video. Again, got a lot of shit right yesterday. So if you're going to get any video right, get it where it's one where I'm getting all the things correct on it. But yes, appreciate all you guys being here as always. And please do like and subscribe. Splash Play, you're always welcoming new people here, even if I occasionally have to yell at you along the way. Patrick Mahomes, there we go. Number 7, Jared Goff, number 8, Justin Herbert, number 9, Lamar Jackson, number 10. So QBs dominating the top 10. The guys that are around here that aren't a QB stand out as well. Stephon Diggs, another guy who should benefit just from teams that don't have Justin Jefferson. If you have Diggs, these guys going to get you there. Diggs and Adams combos look good early on. Adams is one of the best spots he's going to have all year coming up this week. If Adams doesn't come through here, I have a lot of concerns about Devontae Adams moving forward. As I've talked about, I do think he's a guy that is looking really lazy to me with the route running the last few weeks. Seems like the motivation has been waning for him since the Raiders are starting to ebb the wrong way, and he made those public quotes about not wanting to play for a team, not going anywhere. But we'll see if he gets better. Again, we'll talk about matchups later in the week, but I think Diggs-Adams combos to me still very interesting moving forward if Adams can just get back to any sort of effort level when he's actually playing. And people talking about Adam Thielen in the chat. We'll get to him in a moment. Thankfully, Adam Thielen not in the top 10, so that makes me feel good. But certainly one of the things that I think the best ball community as an industry got the most wrong this year was just everybody blindly fading Adam Thielen. So kudos to everybody who did just play the guy, I guess, even though Change an offensive coordinator, change a play caller rather. Frank Reich not calling plays, moving to their actual offensive coordinator calling the plays this year. That is something that could affect Thielen moving forward. So something I'll plant a flag for to watch out for. But obviously Thielen's crushing, and we'll talk about more about that in a moment. Top QB is going to be a lot of the guys we just read off. Josh Allen, number 1. Jalen Hurts, number 2. Tua, again, beating out the elite QBs. This, to me, is why I know people are going to take away, oh, look at elite QBs and how great they're doing. I think the bigger takeaway is that you could have gotten Tua, could have gotten Jared Goff, could have gotten Herbert at cheaper. To me, this was the whole reason you don't take the elite QBs. It was just that you can get there at QB in a bunch of different ways. It does seem like the Pickett, Jordan Love tier of guys not going to be the ones that get you there to help beat or keep up with an elite QB. But even then, it's a really good matchup this week going against Denver for Jordan Love. Kenny Pickett's going to have some better weeks with Deontay Johnson back in. Like, even those guys can give you reasonable facsimiles of these performances. So I think over the course of a season, if you're on drafters, if you're playing for the season-long prize on Underdog, like, yes, elite QB makes a lot more sense. If you're trying to win in week 17, obviously having a guy with a 40, 50-point upside like a Jalen Hurts, like a Josh Allen is huge. But for Patrick Mahomes, like, we're barely cresting past 20. You're telling me you couldn't get there with somebody else? The reliability is great, but I'd rather have a bunch of QBs or a bunch of late QBs that can help me get to 20 week to week. I think it was kind of wasted capital to go to guys like Mahomes. And I think Allen and Hurts are going to do great, but they can still get beaten week to week. Though obviously, not having AR, that's one of the guys that absolutely could have beaten them week to week. And in fact, did beat them week to week when he was actually going. Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields. Justin Fields out with a hand injury, so looks like he'll be out at least 1 week, if not 2. So that could be a not great one for Fields guys moving forward. Fields and Moore obviously connecting pretty well. That did hit some of the regression we expected this past week. But Fields, you'd expect to fall in the top 10 now with his injuries. Brock Purdy hanging around the top 10 as well by sheer inertia. And then again, we still have Sam Howell, Jordan Love hovering outside the top 10. These guys can get there. So I think, and that's including a bye week for Jordan Love as well. So I really think that, to me, Jordan Love's still one to watch. He's looked like shit the last few weeks, but again, a good get right game coming up against Denver. So if he plays well this week, I think we have a lot to look forward to with Jordan Love. If he keeps playing poorly, then obviously it's going to be tough for him to hold on to this even top 15 spot. Trevor Lawrence, too, you have to highlight, just looking bad. Matthew Stafford back down as well. Lack of rushing upside for these guys. Trevor Lawrence, I think, I don't think he's a bust yet, but I do think that he's trending towards bustiness. Playing on Thursday Night Football this week, we'll see what he does. But I'd rather have Desmond Ridder. Again, it just speaks to it here. Just look at how this is chopped up, where you have Howell, Love, Stroud, Ridder, Stafford went late. Dobbs didn't even get drafted. And then you have these guys who did go fairly highly. Like, it's just not a big enough chasm between these guys, I think, to worry too much about it. All right. Thielen finishes a top 12 receiver. I'll eat my hat. And we got Jason here, 20% Thielen. All right, well, let's look at wide receiver. We'll skip over running backs. We'll go back to them in a moment. Wide receivers. Top 10, Tyreek, number 1. Stephon Diggs, number 2. Despite 2 weeks under 8 points, DJ Moore at number 3. So it really does speak to how important the spike weeks of wide receiver are. That, to me, is why you do go on the zero RB runs. You draft 6 wide receivers to start, or at least 6 out of your first 7-8 rounds. DJ Moore, I think, is showing that firsthand, because all it takes, 1 20-point game, 1 45-point game. He's a number 3 receiver on the year, beating a guy who week to week is incredibly reliable in Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen does have the bye week as part of it, but point being, like, a DJ Moore, I think, adds a lot more value to portfolios than a guy, I don't know, than Ramondre. Certainly, you could point to him as one of those guys that was going in that same range. Adam Thielen in at number 5. Half-point PPR, I feel like the bottom can fall out a little bit more. It just takes him not getting a touchdown. So that's something, if you are a Thielen fader, as I am, that you can hold to. But the usage is so great. The opportunity is so great. Of course, the EPA metrics, expected points added, that I talk about the most on here. It's what puts me in a lot of plays that people aren't on. Adam Thielen's been playing lights out in that metric too. So I can't nickel and dime him that much. I think the big concern is just that as the year goes on, maybe you don't need your safety blanket quite as much if you're Bryce Young. And Bryce Young has been dog shit. Right now, he needs that safety blanket. But at a certain point, you force it downfield to DJ Chark. I would love to see Terrace Marshall get back in the mix, because I think he's the best receiver in that entire room. He's a guy that can also get open downfield. So those are the risk points for Adam Thielen. If you're in a season-long league and you get a good offer for him, like somebody offers you injured Justin Jefferson, and I don't know, and you have to give something else back, I'd be willing to trade Thielen, but I do think that certainly hard to ignore what he's doing. I just think there's a little more, wouldn't fully victory lap that one. It feels like one of those guys that we see slowly fall off over the course of a year, but we shall see. Let's see. A.J. Brown at number 6. Obviously, some good games here. Really one outlier game driving him into the top 10. Jamar Chase, again, one outlier game driving him to the top 7. Puka Nacua at number 8. Justin Jefferson still at number 9 despite the injury. Jefferson might hover around top 20 until he actually gets back out there, which is a testament again to how good Justin Jefferson is and how worth it he was as the number 1 player overall drafted. But it obviously going to be tough to hang in here. If you can hang in with Jefferson, again, that game against Green Bay in week 17, I think still looks really good for him. So the hope is that you just don't have as many outlier games from a bunch of dudes over these next few weeks. And if that's the case, Jefferson teams can certainly stay alive. Nico Collins rounds out the top 10. And Davante Adams, again, 2 straight weeks. I would argue 3 straight weeks of him looking mostly like dog shit. He's still in the top 11. Like, I think there's good signs for him. And once again, this matchup for him this week is going to be really good. So I think if he can't go off this week, I have a lot of concerns. If he goes off this week, everything's all good. Davante Adams like a strong play. And I do think for me, Davante Adams, I've already kind of looked a little bit ahead because I was feeling myself after the Showdown success last night. Look a little bit ahead for this week. I think Davante Adams is a very good GPP tournament play already, and one that I'm curious to see how the industry reacts to, because these bad games in a row, I think, are going to scare a lot of people off, and you're going to benefit if you do get it right, and he does have the outlier day. Anybody else interesting here? Jacoby Myers, I think in another good spot. Obviously, Jacoby Myers had a lot more rapport so far with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a guy that looks like a steal. Certainly not a Thielen level steal, but honestly, relative to where these guys are drafted, Puka's number 1, but Adam Thielen, Jacoby Myers, quietly just 2 guys that weren't the sexiest, but just get targeted enough. Both guys running out of the slot. I think that's a thing to look forward to next year, where it didn't work out for Juju. He was one guy that I did highlight in the offseason as being slot guy who can just kind of get there through the crush of targets that come in a shitty team. For these guys, though, it is Jacoby Myers. It is Adam Thielen. So something to think about for next year. Reliable slot guys who have a track record of putting up ceilings. If they're in an offense that's going to use them in the slot, just take them. And I think that's something that could be a little more, could help you get different from a lot of the guys in, the industry that we know about, that we talk about, that we see on social media, that loves to talk you out of guys that are just like, oh, Jacoby Myers, bleh, Adam Thielen, bleh. Like, I think sometimes those blag guys that just get steamed down for no reason besides they're old or they're, not the sexiest picks. I think in the case of Jacoby Myers, I think those are guys that you should probably lean in on a little bit more. Brandon Ayuk, Marquise Brown, Michael Pittman on the surge upwards. As I talked about heading into this week, I do think that Pittman benefits a lot more for having Minshew at QB than Josh Downs does. Josh Downs, a tremendous rapport with Anthony Richardson. A lot of his biggest plays came with AR behind center there. Obviously, Josh Downs still in play, still running a ton of snaps, still looking a lot better than Alec Pierce. But Pittman, I think, is going to have a lot more reliable upside week to week. If he can get you 15 to 20, honestly, every other week throughout the rest of the year, I think the Pittman pick pays off. So another thing that's a bright side for me amidst the AR stuff and him going down. Evans, Kirk, Gabe Davis. And then here's some bad plays. Garrett Wilson looking pretty bad. Olave looking pretty bad. Decent spot for him this week going against Jacksonville on Thursday Night Football, so maybe he can get there, but certainly not an outlier player. Definitely getting hurt by having Michael Thomas out there, as well as another year of Rashid Shaheed coming up. And then, just some big disappointments. Devontae Smith, probably one of the biggest ones. Drake London looking better this week, but still a disappointment on the year. I think this sums it up. DK Metcalf is one that I would highlight here. Bye week, I do think that knocks down his total. Metcalf is so fucking close to an outlier day, and I think he might have it this week. Kenneth Walker, I imagine, is going to be the chalk running back of the week. DK Metcalf, though, I think has some real upside playing alongside Walker or in lieu of Walker in DFS lineup. So Metcalf, I think he's been playing a lot better, looking a lot better, running a lot better routes. I think things are going to look good for him moving forward. So I'm going to plant a flag for that one. Mari Cooper, same thing too. Shout out Go Birds here. Go Birds. Oh, you know what that means. If there's a new member here, we got to welcome him to the family. Oh, Go Birds. Go Birds, go. I'm in the Philly area as well. I do personally not love the Eagles very much, but I respect your right to Eagles privilege. So please, Go Birds, go. I'm going to make some nice sausage and peppers tonight. Go Birds, come on over. Have yourselves a nice sausage. There we go. Welcome to the family. All right. There we go. All right, what the hell's happening to Dotson? It's a regressive offense. It's not playing as well as it should, and not downfield targeting as much. Dotson not getting a crush of targets underneath. And Sam Howell, it is odd. It's an odd thing with Dotson because it does feel like for Jahan Dotson, he should be better in an offense that is passing over expectation and also not taking a lot of deep shots. But for some reason, he doesn't get there every week. I don't know that it's going to look better. I think it's just a low ADOT thing. And then Terry McLaurin is targeting the actual valuable targets in that offense. And then we do have, guys like Logan Thomas who are still out there getting meaningful touches. Curtis Samuel still getting meaningful touches. So that all kind of combines together for a bad scene for Jahan Dotson, even though he probably is better than Curtis Samuel, but he's just not getting the opportunity. Welcome to the Squirt Squad indeed. Always good to see a new member to the Squirt Squad as always. And if you want to be like Go Birds, hit that join button down below, $4.99 a month. Of course, you get the special helmet, you get some emojis in the chat, and you also get my data sheet every weekend as well, which is now on Excel. So you can just click through it, see all the data that I look at. That's part of my gift to you guys for being a supporter of Splash Play. Top running backs, half-point PPR, Christian McCaffrey, number 1. We will see about this injury. I do think it would be wise for him to not go this game, but of course, a little bit biased. But I think going against Minnesota on Monday night, that is ample time for him to rest. If he doesn't go this week, I think that's okay. Giving him one more week to rest wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Obviously, if you don't have McCaffrey and you did heavily up on him and maybe put him in a hyper-fragile build, I would have some cause for concern with that. I do think that he is just getting used a little bit too much. And that is something that for a guy like McCaffrey, who has the history of both, workload-based injuries accumulating, I would watch out for that moving forward. In redraft, I think you probably have to keep McCaffrey unless you get a great offer. But I think he's just been getting so much work. You cannot have a guy with a history of injuries like he has, who's not the biggest dude in the world, getting that much volume over the course of the first third of the season and expect him to hold up for all 18, 17 actual games, all 18 weeks. So I think with McCaffrey, something to watch out for there with him. Raheem Mostert at number 2, obviously one of the biggest outlier players. I do think he gets hurt when Jeff Wilson comes back in. Savon Ahmed could also earn a little bit of a role. The biggest bump to Mostert, though, is going to be if he carries you over the next 3 weeks, obviously including this past week. He's a guy that certainly is going to lose some opportunity back to Achane, though Achane you would expect to have a ramp up coming off of a knee injury. So, but when Achane is full go again, he's going to be full go by the time the playoffs roll around. And that's something for Mostert that I think if there's a lot of advancing Mostert, I think that could be something that ends up really getting hurt in week 15, week 16, and potentially week 17. Travis Etienne at number 3, Kyren Williams at number 4, Kyren also banged up, and then Ronnie Rivers also banged up. So Zach Evans slappies, you might finally get there. Zach Evans, a guy who at Ole Miss looked like a perfectly acceptable running back. To me, looked like a Tank Bigsby kind of guy, just an okay player, maybe a little bit better than Tank, less shifty, but overall better results. For Zach Evans, though, opportunity in this offense is kind of the main thing. The Rams have been aggressively feeding Kyren. As we've talked about, he's got one of the best roles in football. He's just personally not great. And I actually did think he played incredibly well this week. A lot of those runs were not just well-blocked plays. He did kind of get himself out into space to have that 150 rushing yard day. So for Kyren to be going out now, kind of a bummer. And certainly for me, we'll look at my portfolio in a little bit, but my drafters team with Kyren, definitely worried about now because of Kyren not being out there. Devon Achane hanging in. He has 2 zeros, and he is still a top 5 running back. So big kudos here to Zero RB for Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Kyren Williams, Zach Moss at number 6. I don't know how this keeps up. He can't keep breaking big plays. Jonathan Taylor's coming on strong and looking really good. Obviously, this offense overall going to be less good with Minshew behind center instead of AR. So Zach Moss, I think, still very fragile, but for you to get what you're getting out of him as a basically undrafted guy, and people were actively taking Deion Jackson, you should be really happy with your Zach Moss shares. But unless Taylor goes down, Zach Moss cannot hold up a top 10 spot too much moving forward. Kenneth Walker here, top 7 despite having a bye week. Walker's red zone usage is so great. I still do think that Charbonnet should be getting more touches. That could definitely come up if Walker does get hurt and Charbonnet shows off in that time period. Walker, also an injury risk guy historically, but he's young enough that you could certainly bet on the good side of that and feel okay about it. Probably wouldn't trade Walker because of the red zone usage and how good the Seattle team has been in terms of getting the ball downfield, but not actually punching it in the red zone with the pass game. So with Walker, I think he's the one guy here where I think Moss can fall out. Achane being out another 3 weeks can fall out. Kyren, if he's out for a little bit, can fall out. ATN with just the inefficiency that sometimes comes his way can fall out. With Walker, though, I think he's one guy that could actually rise and potentially finish as a top 3, top 5 back. So I love Walker. I think he's doing a really good job. And unfortunately for me, as a Charbonnet believer, Walker's been so good that he's holding him off. Whereas we are seeing the inverse side of that with Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary, where Dameon Pierce is very much not holding off Devin Singletary. So you see both sides of how that can work, obviously, and it does lend credence to what we talked about earlier of having a balanced portfolio a little bit more so. DeAndre Swift hanging in with just steady, unremarkable games, another 0 RB guy. David Montgomery probably out a week or 2. We'll see how he responds to the rib injury. He also hanging in great because of 1 good game, 2 good games, but might have a couple zeros coming up that would knock him out of the top 10. Bijan Robinson, top 10 as well. Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard. Pollard, we're seeing the downside. I feel like I've seen a lot more hate for him. And this is something that I warned about at the end of last year and also all offseason, that he did get less efficient as he got more work down the stretch last year, and also just as the crush of touches over the course of a season caught up with him. I think he looked great last night for stretches, so I think there's some signs of life there. And I don't think it's all on him. I think it's the way he's being used, where he's basically just being run up the gut a lot. Last night was the first time he was getting downfield, getting targeted in meaningful ways downfield, actually getting some good blocking to open up space and getting to that second level. So I think Pollard's going to have better days, but it certainly doesn't surprise me. Like if he ends up with a lot of this 14 to 16 point stuff, and he's going to have a 30-pointer at some point, but when that happens, we'll find out. Pollard's become a pure volume, low RB1. I think he's still better than like a Saquon, who another guy this week is probably a great play. I think that Pollard I would put a little bit above that, but I agree that he is mostly volume dependent. And the red zone roll, when the red zone roll is not there, you kind of see games like this. If the red zone roll is there and he's getting the 5 to 7 red zone touches, like he's going to get you closer to 21. So you really need games where the Cowboys get into the red zone frequently and then actually decide to go with their best foot forward with that. But it's tough to predict and tough with Dallas because I just don't have a lot of faith in that offense. What they did last night, I think didn't do a whole lot more. Dak running on that one play was certainly great. A sign of life for Dak in particular, but for the team, it just still wasn't that effective. Even though CeeDee Lamb was open every time. Michael Gallup dropped so many fucking passes, but had a lot of space around him. Brandon Cooks had his first good game of the year. That offense could be a lot more explosive, but the way they're playing it is not designed to be very explosive. He just looks terrible all around. That is very much true. Blame McCarthy for the Pollard downfall. I think it's McCarthy, but I do think Pollard was just a little bit too juiced up, and he is a 26-year-old coming off of a fibula injury. So, there's a couple things that are adding up to not be great there. And what worried me the most was just seeing his efficiency kind of plummet downward as he started to get more work at the end of last year. But, it's still like the volume is the main thing, and they're very committed to giving him touches. So I wouldn't trade Pollard or anything. I think you'd be trading him at a low right now. If you could trade for Pollard, I'd probably still do it if that's any sort of reflection on what the situation is. Brian Robinson, number 13, Isaiah Pacheco, number 14. Again, 0 RB drafters. I just have to point it out, man. We were talking 1, 2, 3, 4. You can make the case he's one of them, but we won't. Swift is 5, 6 for Montgomery, 7 for Brian Robinson, 8 for Pacheco. Breece Hall was not a 0 RB guy. 9 for James Cook. Madison close. 10 out of 20 top running backs right now are 0 RB guys. And this is not normally how the beginning of a season goes. So as the season goes on, you do expect more chaos. You expect more guys to get hurt. You expect guys like these to pop up. But I do think that for this to be 50% of the portfolio right now, the top 20 half-point PPR running backs being 0 RB guys means that this is the most live year we've had for a 0 RB team to actually make it all the way. So can it move around? We have had the high value running backs getting hurt early and then coming back in. So maybe that sort of keeps them from getting injured later on, possibly. But I do think for how it looks right now, this is why my teams outperformed what they were doing early on, is because there are a lot of good 0 RB guys that are, were candidates to be there. And this is why, to me, you don't really heavy up on running back capital. If you do heavy up at running back, you take one and just hope that works out. You hope it's a Christian McCaffrey. You hope it's an Eckler. You hope it's an ATN. I think that's how that goes. If you thought drafters were pissing yellow this season, just waits for next year. Yeah, I think that's the case. Look, that was my big thesis, guys, was that running back was going to become a lot more tight end. Like tight end, rather. And I think that's sort of what we're seeing so far is you have your elite players. Sometimes they do have games that are not adding a lot of value, like these two. But then sometimes they give you this kind of game. So Christian McCaffrey, running back Travis Kelce, running back Mark Andrews. I just think that's what the position is. And the more that the ADPs adapt to that, obviously there's less of an advantage. But I think this year they didn't fully adapt to that would be how I feel about it. Talk about wide receivers. Let's look at the tight ends here. Now we'll get into my portfolio. Top half-point PPR tight ends. Travis Kelce, number 1. Sam Laporta hanging at number 2. Of course, he has not missed a game yet. None of these guys have had a bye, but Andrews and Kelce were hurt in week 1. TJ Hockenson at number 4. Hockenson not benefiting right away from the lack of Justin Jefferson would give me some concern as a Hockenson drafter. We still know he has a gigantic upside. He could give you a 40, 50-point game like he did last year for Detroit. Would not be the biggest shocker in the world, but Addison's going to get targets. Osborne's going to get targets. Brandon Powell is going to get targets for while Jefferson is out. So if we don't get this Hockenson spike week with Jefferson out, I would have a little bit of concern for him, being able to get me to this Kelce Andrews tier. But he's going to be good enough to hang in the top 10, and maybe that still inherently is worth the elite tight end capital. I don't know. But I think I'd rather have some late guys right now compared to Hockenson. Cole Kmet, Dalton Schultz, George Kittle, Evan Ingram, Jonnu Smith at number 9. You would think that Kyle Pitts is good games and put him ahead of Jonnu Smith, but no, a completely undrafted tight end still in the top 10. Dallas Goedert at number 10. Waller coming out a little bit. I think Waller would benefit more from having Tyrod continue to play for right now with Daniel Jones out for the neck injury. Tyrod just a little bit more able to run a functional offense right now than Daniel Jones, who seems pretty lost in the sauce this year. But I think for Waller, I just don't expect him to have 40 fantasy point upside, even 30 fantasy point upside. If you get a couple 20-point games from Waller, I think you probably got to be stoked compared to what the run out has been so far. We have Hunter Henry, Logan Thomas, Ferguson. The guy that I'm going to highlight, though, where is he? He's very low down on this list. Michael Mayer coming on strong here. Finally got the lead role in the tight end situation there with Austin Hooper. Played it out well. 10 half-point PPR points for Michael Mayer looks pretty good. If Devontae Adams' motivation wanes and he somehow misses games or something, you could see Michael Mayer have a really big surge. So Mayer is the one guy that out of the rookie tight ends has not paid off at all. And I do think he's in a good position to start to pay off moving forward. So that's coming along at a very good time for me. I do think a guy like Mayer and Luke Musgrave is also in a great spot going against Denver this week. Two guys that could certainly help you out if you are dealing with the injury crush like we talked about earlier. But the rookie tight ends, I think Laporte has been crushing it. I think now is the time we're going to start to see Musgrave, Mayer start to move up. And then besides that, Kincaid at some point, I think will have a good game, but the concussion, never great to have a concussion as a rookie. We'll see how long that stays with him. Was limited in practice, probably could have gone this week, but didn't escape the protocol. He'll be out the next game the Bills play, but for Kincaid, I think his ADP was always a little bit too high, and I think for right now, I'm more confident probably in Mayer and Musgrave and those guys having a ceiling, I think, than I would be in Kincaid having a real one. Doesn't this prove that one tight end BBM was the move? So many zeros, even in the elite category. No, I think this proves that 3 tight end builds were the move. Of course, I was predisposed to him, but I think the point is just that you wanted to get 6 to 12 points from somebody every week. And obviously, if you did try to do that with a single tight end, like let's say you only took Kelsey or Andrews, like you're still getting under 6 with Andrews 1, you're still getting under 10 with Kelsey, and you're also missing out on all the first round guys who could have given you spike weeks. So that wouldn't be it. If your one tight end was Cole Kmet, you've got these weeks here that are pretty tough. I think it's just more like if you had 3 late tight ends that are all giving you between 5 to 12, 5 to 13, I think that's a configuration that can win it all. But it all depends though, because we just haven't seen that 40-point tight end week yet from a guy that's been consistent throughout. And if that happens, like an Evan Ingram week last year, or Hawkinson week last year, those ones are certainly going to completely shift the tight end pool. So I think 3 tight ends are just trying to get one guy who goes a little bit later than elite and can give you a 30, 40-point week once or twice in the year, I think would still be the thing that looks the best to me. 1 or 3 tight end by Modal. Sunday night proved that the Bills need a reliable second option, Diggs and nobody else. Yeah, Diggs is so great that I wouldn't nickel and dime him that much for it. Gabe Davis is still out there, and I think, he just doesn't get open enough, which is the biggest issue. They're not really throwing those deep shots as much as we talked about. Josh Allen not taking as many deep shots this year, not running as much this year. They're playing a little bit closer to the vest because I think they know that defense can carry him through a lot. So that's something where I think that sort of hurts a Gabe Davis. I agree they need a third guy out there. It's just Kincaid. Yeah, he's a rookie. He's a rookie, and he's got to get better separation, got to get better opportunities overall. And he's still not playing enough snaps, like even though he's playing a lot more than I think people worried about. So I agree there's an opportunity for Kincaid. I just don't think it's going to be as easy for him to find the ceiling, because if you're the Bills, like, do you want to feed Diggs 12 touches and feed Kincaid 4, or do you want to cut down Diggs' touches and feed Kincaid more? I think I'd rather just take my shots, keep continuing to feed Diggs, who's been great so far this year. Anybody else to highlight here? Hunter Henry back on the way down. It's just a very flat position. Kylan Granson's top 20. Donald Parham's top 20. Noah Gray is almost top 20. So really no great bets coming up so far, but I do think Musgrave is one to watch here. His usage has been good enough that I think all it takes is 1 or 2 big plays a game for him to really have some major upside. And I think this week is one against Denver that I expect him to hit that upside probably for the first time. All right. Underdog, here's where I got to take my lumps. Before I take my lumps, guys, please, let's do this. Let's subscribe down below. Let's hit the like button. Let's leave a comment if you can, if you're watching after the fact. Splash Play on the march to 3,000 subs. Yesterday's Showdown video converted more subscribers than anything we've done in a while on here. So kudos to all you guys who are joining here. We do 5 shows a week, Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. Splash Play. I always do my best to put together the best data, to do the best I can, to show you guys what I'm seeing. You can do what you want with it. You can go along with it. You can fade it. Obviously, I prefer you go along with it and go, hey, great take. But that's what it is here. It's all about the love of fantasy football all year round. No scripts here, just vibes, just data. That's what we do here on Splash Play. And of course, go check out Probably as well, my baby. Getting some good bets at probably.com. Free for you to find the expected value of all these different bets using the top probabilities from sportsbooks around the world. That's what we do at probably.com. So check that out. Trying to find funding, trying to get everything going there. So help a brother out. Check it out. And there you go. Let's go to the Underdog promo code. So yeah, so getting crushed. Got 5,700 at stake, winning 650. Not a great week for me. Pre-draft best ball. these are all kind of hanging the same. Like nothing really took a big hit. Really think, as I talked about, big board I should have done better in given my player taking of it. But overall, the big board not doing great for me because I didn't stack up enough guys. We'll see what gets there at the end, though. I have a few outliers that look pretty good, but probably aren't worth dwelling over. My best team continues to be in the golden. This one has 890 fucking points. Again, the Golden, a single winner tournament where everybody gets eliminated. Only one person can win 20K. This is not the tournament I want to have my best score in, but this is my best team. Tua, Derek Carr's contributed nothing. Saquon Barkley, again, I think is going to have a smash week this week. Travis Etienne, Brian Robinson, Elijah Mitchell, maybe get some upside. Raheem Mostert carrying a rare 5 running back build for me. Tyreek Hill hitting the nuts on him as well. Brandon Ayuk, Mike Evans, Jahan Dotson, who's been disappointing, but it has contributed 10.7 points for me. Michael Thomas, Rondale Moore, Isaiah Hodgins, Terrace Marshall, Puka Nacua. Those are my receivers, and a tight end, Mark Andrews, and the absolutely worthless Juwan Johnson, who has not put up a bigger game than Taysom Hill did in this last game without Juwan Johnson. So not the best. Point being, though, sick fucking team. Just wish it was in any tournament besides the one that only one person can win it all. That is, of course, my luck. Hello, King. Hey, shout out to our boy Jake Twitchell. Jake, one of my favorite drafters that we draft with in the offseason. Glad to see him in here during the regular season. My Golden is also top 2 in the pod right now. Yes, we're all going to have our best teams come together in the Golden and eliminate each other so somebody else can win 20 grand. What a great tournament. What great fun. All right, on to the tough one here. Best Ball Mania. $425 winning means that I have 17 entries advancing right now. A lot of them in second place as well. AR being out, Jefferson being out, Achane being out. These were the guys that were driving my early success in Best Ball Mania. I was advancing above average. Now I'm advancing at a 12% rate. So that is not my favorite thing in the world, advancing under average. Again, for myself and for you guys who might be in a similar boat, it is early. If you are a drafter like me who drafts zero RB teams, it is going to get better. That said, for right now, I think this is going to be a tough month for me in Best Ball Mania to the point where like doing the stream is going to be hard. It's not going to be fun for me to step up here and do these streams because I'm like embarrassed of how this is running for me, even though I know the meta parts of why it's working out the way it is. And again, still a lot of Spags Stacks teams here, still a lot of my head-to-heads with Pete teams. So out of my 17 teams advancing right now, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of them are head-to-heads with Pete. So 25% of my advancing teams are head-to-heads with Pete. Spags Stacks teams, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the same thing for my Spag Stacks team. So once again, doing teams on stream is the best thing I can do for myself. And that is why next year, every draft I do for the most part is going to be on stream, or at least every day there'll be a draft here on stream. But I don't know what the takeaway is from that other than I draft better with you guys. I draft better by having you guys here as a vessel for me to do what I'm doing. But literally, like these are all. So if you see SP on something, that's a team that I drafted on stream without Pete. You see H2H, that's the team I drafted on stream with Pete. You see Spag Stacks, that's the team that I drafted in Spag Stacks. I'm literally only advancing out of teams that I did by myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 teams are advancing that I just did on my own. So is there a disadvantage to streaming? I guess I would advocate that no, there is no disadvantage to streaming. And in fact, you might get cleaner rooms. You might get better rooms. I don't really know what to make of it because I wasn't always drafting with you guys. I was obviously starting the drafts before stream would start. But I do think that from my perspective, I don't see a big difference between my stream teams and my non-stream teams. And if anything, I guess I might pay more attention when I'm stream. I just don't know what to make it out of. Squirt Squad draft equals best advance rates. Love to see it. Yes, and all the injuries this past week sucks. That is true. It's been a month of injuries. I mean, this is football. I think it's a little bit more extreme this year than otherwise, but that's what it is. I believe this one is my current top scorer. 804. And this one is, again, the same one we've talked about the last few weeks, Lamar and Tua. Dobbins contributing nothing. Rashad White, Achane, Jalen Warren, Spears, Chuba. So this week we had no Warren, but got good games out of Spears and Chuba. That helps. Got to keep getting good weeks out of these other 5 guys to survive. Dobbins being out the year. Tyreek, DJ Moore, Pickens, Quentin Johnson. Quentin Johnson might be one of my least favorite picks, by the way, of the entire offseason. I do think if he landed on a different team, if he were in the Nico Collins role on Houston, I think he'd be a world beater because he is buried behind Josh Palmer, who just runs good routes out of different spots in the field. It's hard for Quentin Johnson to see the field. I don't know how he passes Josh Palmer besides an injury. We're now post-bye as well. No post-bye rookie bump for Quentin Johnson either. He needs something to break his way for it to work out, but Quentin Johnson, I think, certainly looking pretty good. And or not looking pretty good, looking pretty bad. So the opposite, Mark Andrews, Durham Smythe. Durham Smythe fucking useless. Just 0 after 0 for Durham Smythe. Not adding a lot of value there. Has Jerry apologized for his Dalvin Cook take yet? Yes, he has. And I've also apologized to Jerry for being so mean to him. Jerry is a pal around here now. But yes, that was one that was very vividly gotten wrong by Jerry. And but he took his lumps. So Jerry, more power to him. Hopefully he's on the Michael Carter train now as Michael Carter continues to steal pass game work from Breece Hall. Rookie wide receiver has been rough. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think we need to be a little more mindful of team situations that guys are coming into, where like JSN, I still think is a good player. Quentin Johnston, I still think is more likely a good player than a bad player. But because these guys are coming into situations where there's such an established pecking order and also like a fairly intricate offense, I think it's hard for these guys to come in and get meaningful snaps. And I think for JSN to have his ceiling, he needs to take over Lockett's role. For Quentin Johnston to have his ceiling, he needs to take over Josh Palmer's role or Keenan Allen's role. And it's not going to happen. Like, it's not going to happen barring injuries. So I think you trust in the talent over the course of a year. Obviously, we're still only a third in, so maybe Quentin Johnston can pass a Josh Palmer at some point. But there's nothing you're hearing in terms of practice reports, nothing that we've seen on the field that's going to make that happen. So it kind of becomes like a two-leg parlay then, where not only do we need one of the guys to get hurt, or you need Quentin Johnston to get an outlier performance that somehow gets there. I think it's pretty tough for that to happen. So I think the biggest focus to me is the parlay part of it. It's like, how do you cut your parlays? Like betting on Adam Thielen was a one-leg parlay, basically, unless you're counting the age and injury and whatever. But he just had to be out there and just be getting targets. Whereas like Terrace Marshall had to pass the guy with draft capital, had to pass 2 free agent signings. I think that's my biggest lesson is like, those guys can win it out, can win the job if the talent's really there. But sometimes inertia just keeps something going. And I think with the inertia of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, who are also good players, Josh Palmer, who's a good enough player, that's enough to keep a Quentin Johnston at bay. It's enough to keep JSN at bay in Seattle. And the way Seattle uses JSN is also just awful. Just low A-dot targets is not the best way to use anybody ever. They're using him like Rondale Moore, and he's not Rondale Moore. Anything else to point at? We can look at regular season. What's my worst team? I have to look at my app to see that. Let's just find a 12th place team. Let's look at a really bad team here. That's going to make me feel bad, I guess. A lot of third places here. We're going to get back on track in Best Ball Mania, but it's going to be a tough run. All right, here's one. All right, so this is a head-to-head with Pete. Pete currently in 7th here, so not doing much better. My team is in 12th with 553. Deshaun Watson, mysterious shoulder injury. He's out. Jordan Love underperforming for a few weeks. Nick Chubb out for the year. Dameon Pierce, busto perhaps. Tyler Algier looking more busto by the week as Bijan Robinson seizes more of a role. Jeff Wilson still not back out there. Hopefully we'll get back out there this week, but he probably still not going to get as much of a role as Achane had. Gus Edwards, actually not bad to the draft capital. Gus Edwards is a passable 0 RB play. AJ Brown, okay. Jerry Jeudy might get traded. That's something that could be good for him. But honestly, I think anybody playing on Denver, it's hard to expect a ceiling, just how they're all being used. Christian Watson, this is the week for Christian Watson. If Christian Watson doesn't come through versus Denver, you are going to find me apoplectic on next Tuesday. George Pickens, Romeo Dobbs, Alan Lazard. This team is, I don't know how I draft this team because this does not feel like a me team at a certain point. But I think just getting on, it's because of the week 17 bringbacks. I had Cleveland, so I'm like, you got to get a Jets bring back. So we got Alan Lazard, who's barely doing anything. McCole Hardman, who might not be on the team in a few weeks. Mac Hollins, this team is not very good. Oh, the Icon is first in that one. A regular draft from the offseason. Good for the Icon. There are a few for our pal Jeremy that I have seen not as good in some of our leagues. But Jeremy due for one here. Fields and Tua. Going to be tough for him without Fields, but Tua probably carrying a lot of that. A nicely built team here for the Icon. Falls off a little bit with these late receivers. Claypool's giving him points, so you can't argue that. Not going to give him much more, you would think, but Claypool still inactive for Miami. We'll see what happens there. Nothing else too interesting to highlight here, I guess. Just some nice third places. The amount of AR you are seeing is true. I mean, it's nice to see all the third place medals. We're not off from all of these. This one, though, AR, Kyler, Philadelphia, Ramondre. Ugh. Rashad Penny, by the way, Rashad Penny, the most quiet killer of my portfolio. Can we fucking cut Rashad Penny? Can we let this guy? There's a lot of teams that could use a Rashad Penny. If Rashad Penny's on the Cardinals right now, he's absolutely smashing. If Rashad Penny, probably not on the Bears. Like, there's a lot of teams Rashad Penny could be on and could be useful. And instead, he's just collecting zeros for Philadelphia. Drives me nuts. Do I have a specific approach when drafting an underdog weekly tournaments? I think the Badge Bros would be better to consult about that, Luis. But in general, you are trying to get some ADP values early on and then trying to scroll down for your correlations a little bit later on. But that's not a hard and fast rule. Our boy Nez wrote some good articles about it. If you search Nez, I think it's Nez Writes is his site. Wrote up a pretty good best ball primer. There's another good one on 33rd Team. I would check those out. But we do the drafts on Friday. Frankly, the optimal for Battle Royales escapes me still, as we've talked about on here. But I think just try it out and at least have a 1-to-1 stack, but don't overstack. That's the main thing with those tournaments. All right, let's go to the leaderboard so you guys can victory lap whatever you want here. I don't think I have anything in the leaderboard. Maybe that one with 800, but probably not even that at this point. Yep, no, Chris Sauls is in here. Shout out Chris Sauls. Look at all the guys named Chris who are not me. We got Chris Nothing in here. There's a guy who just has Chris as his username who's got 1, 2, 3. Fuck, I'm not even the best Chris drafter. Like, not even close. These guys are all crushing it. Regular season prize, never the thing I'm competing for. So that's my 1 point of solace. But there we go. That's the leaderboard overall. Of course, we can't actually see the teams. The Spike Week tool, if you want to pay for that, you can see the teams individually. Our guy FF Louis G was in first place for a while. He's down to number 5. I don't know D Trout. Don't see anybody else here that stands out. Cubs fan, I know that name. Don't know who he is. Road DFS seems familiar. Don't really know offhand. Nobody too interesting here. Our pal Pete, I know, does his review. He's got a few in here. Got two for him. There we go. That's your leaderboard. My best team is a head-to-head with Pete. Feel like the stream drafts I did were better with less sniping. It's a fair point, Brandon. It might be right. I mean, I can't argue the results. I think we still need to see the whole year to feel sort of a confidence level with it. But I think the pressure of drafting on a stream, also the way that stream, that if you are, especially on a Pete stream where he gives like a little bit of a buffer for people to get in and pings the channel, like you're getting people who are drafting a little more optimally so they get out of your way a bit more. I think there is something to that logic. And, if Pete wins BBM, then we'll know for sure. All right, so here you can see on DraftKings, of course, the tournament platform that I'm enjoying a lot more for best ball right now. Currently winning 1,428.83, which means that 27 of my lineups are advancing. So we're at about a little bit over an 18% advance rate, I believe. So that should be pretty good for me right now on DraftKings. Again, relative to what I've been doing so far, where I've had a 30% advance rate in the beginning of the year, a 40% advance rate on DraftKings. We are coming down, but you'd expect that obviously naturally, and especially with the guys that I've had hurt. Top teams, though, you can see one that I have over. I have 2 over 100K, or over 1K rather, not over 100K. Over 1K. Goff, Ford, Spears, St. Brown, Tyreek. This is a loaded. You look right here, guys. This is why I draft the way I do, to build a team like this one that Cooper's been underperforming, and he still gave me 18 points this week. 2 30-point scorers at receiver. Doesn't even matter that Ford and Spears didn't even contribute over 12. Laporta, 2 didn't even make my lineup. Devontae Smith, at some point, you got to think has a good game. Jerry Jeudy, same thing. David Montgomery, we're surviving right now. Marvin Jones. Roshan's one guy, too. I didn't highlight enough. I'm going to plant a flag right now. Roshan, Kendre Miller, 2 guys that I'm very heavy on. Roshan's going to get his shot now. He missed this week with the concussion lingering effects. Deonta Foreman did nothing to win that job, so that's a good sign for Roshan. We do have Herbert out for the next few weeks, so with Roshan, he's going to get his shot to actually get out there and do something meaningful. Obviously, you'd expect the defense to kind of crawl up a little bit this week with Tyson Bagent at QB from them. But Roshan, even if he sees 8-man boxes, he was great against them in college. I think he's got a shot. But Roshan and Kendre Miller are 2 that it just takes an Alvin Kamara injury or for Kendre Miller to see some more of that role. But Roshan, I think, has the easiest pathway to being an outlier rookie running back right now. So that's a guy I would watch out for over the next month, I think, in particular, because he can really win this job and run away with it. Let's see. Top score for CLN is 1035. Okay, that's not too bad. Obviously better than mine, so you got that going for you. My other 1,000-point team. And again, I've got a lot of fucking good teams on DraftKings. I said it before. I know this has been a running theme here. Of course, the suffering that I put up every single week with DraftKings that we saw on stream. I think I have a much better shot at winning the DraftKings, Millie. Just the way that I drafted, how less sharp the rooms were. I think that I'm going to be live for a few teams here, but we'll see how the next few weeks go. This team's got Lamar, Kyron Williams, Tony Pollard, Stephon Diggs, Pittman, Boyd got in the lineup, so good for Boyd. Andrews, Ayuk, Mike Evans didn't make it this week. Pierce, fucking wasted pick. Irv Smith, wasted pick. Dobbins injured. Dillon out. Could be a good week for Dillon coming up, or Aaron Jones going against Denver. Yeah, Achan, AR. That's the one thing here. These guys are basically in every lineup of mine. At least we will see Achan again this year, but AR, I think there's a good shot that I carry AR into a finals team, especially on DraftKings. I think there's a good shot, but I think on Underdog or DraftKings, it wouldn't shock me if I get in with one QB in AR or AR as part of a 3 QB build on DraftKings. So I would like to win Best Ball Mania, even if AR doesn't play another down. I know people think he's not going to. I think there's still a chance that he opts for rehab and gets back out there. Even if he doesn't play another down, if I can win a tournament or at least get into the finals with an AR team, I'll feel pretty good about that. I think it's about the ceremony of it. It's about the pageantry of getting my boy AR into the mix. And I don't know if you guys saw, by the way, AR injured shoulder going to visit fans with an injured shoulder while wearing a sling. Like what a great fucking guy. How could you not root for him? How could you not root for my portfolio? How could you not root for both of those things? My worst team on DraftKings. Let's see. Oh, it's actually fun that it tells you your opponents. So I am fucking dusting a good amount of opponents, which is pretty good. Yeah, I think DraftKings, look, man, I'm very happy with my DraftKings results, and have no fear, guys. Next year, there's going to be a DraftKings stream every single week because I don't know how I'm not going to go back to the DraftKings well with how well this ran for me this year. My worst team, 670, which is not great, but again, I think could be worse. Mac Jones, Jesus. James Cook, Jesus. Samaje Perine, useless. Cooper Kupp. Hey, Cooper Kupp's back in. He's doing okay. Chris Olave, not playing well. Terry McLaurin, not playing up to snuff either. Dallas Goedert, didn't play well this week, but has had at least one spike week. Michael Thomas, Higgins, Akers, Fant, Bigsby, Xavier Hutchinson is supposed to have been drafted a little bit earlier in the cycle. I think this team is like totally dead. Like, I don't think I drafted any completely dead teams on DraftKings, which is the biggest thing for me. So I feel really good about my DraftKings portfolio. I think I can advance 20% by the end of this all. Again, that's very hasty. We'll see how it goes, but I think that's something that would not be the worst thing in the world for me. Here's one where I'm going against a 1,000 point team, and we're going to go to drafters last, and we'll close it out. Sam Howell is my team. Stevenson, Algier, Cup. The Cup teams are going to surge. I do have a lot of Cup on DraftKings, so I think that should be good for me. Definitely vacuumed up a lot of the Cup late, so we'll see how that goes. And I did not, oh boy, did not have a single point from the bench. My starters were the only guy who did anything. Kene Nwangwu is on this team. Danny Gray. This had to be an early one, I would think. But holy shit. So all of my starters made the lineup here. The good news, this is like being on a shitty team in high school or middle school or whatever. Is like they're all getting playing time. They got to be stoked that they're getting on the field. So that bodes well for those guys. Woof, what a team. All right, drafters. Let's look at this last. So despite the fact that I thought this week was going to be bad for me, obviously, again, no AR on this team, so that probably helps. We actually are up to top 600, so that bodes decently for me here. We got Tua, Breece Hall, another usable week for him, Kyron Williams. So we now need Kyron to yield to Cook or Gainwell. This backfield, though, surviving with Achane out. So that's a positive. Gus Edwards could step up as well, I suppose. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Smith, Michael Pittman, Sky Moore. Man, if I just didn't have Sky Moore on this team, I'd feel a lot better about it. But Sky Moore, Pierce, Hyatt. Hyatt's one guy to watch out for the post-bye rookie bump. Slayton has been played a little bit better this week, but not playing so well. Hodgins is out there running useless snaps. He does block okay. But Hyatt, there's still room for him to get out there more. So I do have some hope he can get there. Terrace Marshall, I still think the most talented Carolina receiver. He'll get back out there. Hawkinson and Taysom Hill made the team this week. So that shows you how bad it was. Tight end making the flex. My other team here is cashing, but not cashing anywhere near as well. Fields, AR, of course, perhaps done. Henry, Javonte, useless. Achane out. Roshan, hopefully will have some better weeks. This one doesn't feel like a season-long winner, I have to say. Mechie, Hardman, just a lot of busted picks. That sucks. My worst team is probably still that Watson-Chubb one, I would think. Yeah, Watson, Chubb, Goff. This one's just dead. Chubb on a thing like drafters, like you lose Chubb on drafters, I think your team is just completely donezo. So that one, no hope for there. But hey, to have two advancing, I only drafted 7 teams on drafters, got paid by drafters finally after some, by the way, appreciate all you guys use the /100 promo code. We did not get a whole lot in that /100 promo code. Apparently that wasn't part of the deal. So hope you guys took advantage of it, but did not get the many, many winnings that would come, or the many CPA fees that would come from that one. But drafters, great experience. I think drafters will be a part of our process next year too. So there we go. Lessons learned. Don't draft FA players. They're all Will Fullers. You draft the free agents in the big board. Like you draft them then in the assumption that they're going to land in a spot. I don't think you draft them when they go into free agency, into the season too much. Like Zeke, he got a touchdown. What's that really doing for you? Kareem Hunt got a touchdown. Is that doing a lot for you? Maybe in a 0 RB build, but not for most other builds. So that's the kind of thing for me that, yeah, I've never been a big draft and hope this guy lands somewhere, kind of thing. But especially with aging running backs, I would avoid that more so. I have 1,006 on drafters. There you go. That's got to be finishing pretty good. Oh, who's number one here? Number one is 1,096. Chubb. Chubb. Poor Chubb. Josh Allen is in the winning team right now. And again, elite QB shit. Josh Allen gave them 14 points this week. Like elite QB, you could have beaten that with a litany of guys. I just don't think you need the elite QB as much, even though on drafters, again, it does make sense because of what they do over the course of a year. At running back, he had Mostert and Kyron Williams, so he'll be down Williams. But a good team so far. Swift giving you solid usable weeks. Montgomery. But this guy drafted Dalvin Cook and drafted McKinnon, who are not adding a lot of value, even though you do expect some spike weeks. Deneric Prince, wasted roster spot for this guy as well in first place. Diggs, Allen, Moore, Evans. This makes sense. All the guys that have been spiking early. Do you think that Evans regresses a little bit, especially if that hamstring lingers? Baker Mayfield also played probably the worst game of his season so far, so maybe some signs of regression coming there after Baker's been so good to start the year. Rashid Shaheed looking like a great late pick as well. Parker, not that usable. Chase Claypool, not the most usable yet. Claypool, I guess, has one out where he'd probably still be behind like Robbie, Chosen, Anderson. I think so. Claypool, his out is probably Miami has both Hill and Waddle hurt, and then the touches just get spread around, and maybe Claypool can get there, but probably a busted roster spot as well. Oh, 10 Minute was in 8th place last week. Good for you, 10 Minute. Hey, Drafter is a great platform to draft on. I'll give them the full credit here. I think this, I don't know if our promo code still works, but there you go. There's the Drafters promo code for you. All right, guys, there's your best ball review. Those are the guys to watch out for. If I'm going to plant flags here for guys that I think can matter, if you are looking at the injuries coming up here, I do think that there's going to be better weeks for Christian Watson. He's a guy that could fill in, maybe give you some spike weeks if you have Jefferson on those teams. Obviously, there aren't a lot of Jefferson Watson teams out there. At running back, though, Roshan coming up. Kendre hopefully going to get some more usage back from Alvin Kamara. The Kamara, 26 touches last week. Hard to dig out of that. That's best ball for you. It's a long journey, guys, but I appreciate, as always, all you guys being here with me on that journey. Please subscribe down below. Please hit the like button. Please leave a comment if you're watching after the fact. Let me know how your teams are doing. If there's anything you want a victory lap. If Big Lenny wants to come back in and say, oh, my bad, I now see what you talked about, Christian McCaffrey. I'm willing to accept that too. All are welcome here in Splash Play, so please do subscribe down below. And if you want to join the channel as well, $4.99 a month down there. You get emojis, you get the special helmet on here, so everybody knows you're a VIP, and also you get access to my data sheet on the weekends as well. So go subscribe down below and hit the join button, $4.99 a month. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod, and come back tomorrow for the abridged version of the Spags rankings. I'm just going to show you guys top 10s. We're going to look at the graphics. We're going to explain the methodology. That's how it's going to go. I feel like I'm also watching myself right here because I have the YouTube stream going. My hands are going wild. I'm just gesturing insanely in the end here. But thank you guys for hanging out here. And again, if your best ball teams are feeling like dust, it's a long season. You still got 2/3 of the season left, basically. So you can get there, stay strong, keep a solid head about it, and come back for more here on Splash Play. Appreciate all you guys hanging out as always. And I will see you guys again tomorrow. Shout out to the Squirt Squad, and good luck, guys, and whatever you're doing. See you soon. Bye.